Asking blue pill, red pill, corporate press, I've had my fill. I'm just a simple chap, believing in my own will. Web fire, math table, scheming, this is no drill. Haters masking boosted, but still with no chill. Need to come and take it if you wanna mess with my hill. We've been 3D printing, setting ready for that ghost kill.
Welcome back to another episode of The Maple Pill. As always, I'm your host, Matt McKeever, and welcome to episode 65. So I think today is a holiday. Being self-employed or unemployed or underemployed, I'm not sure what to call myself. Time really becomes very relative, but I'm pretty sure it's a stat holiday for some people. Let me know in the comment section, but either way, I thought I'd still bring you another episode of The Maple Pill. We've got lots to chat about, whether it's mainstream media and blue check marks losing their shit about the idea of Elon Musk buying Twitter. And it sounds like, Twitter and all the other large stakeholders will do everything in their power to make sure Elon doesn't buy it. We'll see how that plays out. If nothing else, I imagine Elon's doing this just for the troll of it. And I think he's getting good mileage for what he's attempting so far. We're also going to be talking about, our headline story tonight, which is let me see if I get this right, a Polster that's primarily contracted by Justin Trudeau's government, who received $1.7 million, I think, over the last year. Maybe it was 2 years. We'll get into the fact check in a second. Essentially called out Pierre Poilievre for being a authoritarian populist and said he was going to make sure that Pierre never became prime minister. Interesting. This seems like a slightly more direct route, I guess, to government controlling all the institutions and Trudeau making sure that everyone just parrots his lines, compared to, mainstream media. Still, at least there's a veil there that makes it feel like maybe there is a bit of separation between the propaganda wing of the government and the government. But I don't know. We'll get into it tonight. And actually, before we even jump into any of the pills stories tonight, and we've got a full course of pills for you guys, and reminder, as always, links in the video description down below to all the stories we're going to cover tonight. Except this first one I'm going to share with you, because yesterday I started off playing a video. It seemed like you guys enjoyed that. And so maybe we'll just make this like a reoccurring theme here on the Maple Pill. But let's call it Tonight and Stupid. Maybe that's the segment name. I'm not sure here. But anyways, I wanted to share this video because it's shocking at this point in time that mainstream media essentially is just saying the quiet part out loud. But don't take my word for it. Let's literally listen to them say it.
Who were Trump voters and are still Trump supporters. They go, yeah, you guys are going crazy. He's doing, what are you so surprised about? He's doing exactly what he said he's going to do.
Well, and I think that the dangerous, edges here are that he's trying to undermine the media, trying to make up his own facts. And it could be that while unemployment and the economy worsens, he could have undermined the messaging so much that he can actually control exactly what people think. And that is our job.
Yeah, if you look at the issues.
So not sure if you caught it there at the end, but essentially her last sentence was, Elon could actually control what people think. That is our job. And so maybe that was meant as a joke. I wouldn't put it past them, but I actually think that she just was speaking honestly there. And what's interesting, too, is how comfortable these individuals are. And we've seen it in the Canadian press as well, essentially creating a straw man out of nothing, right? They'll just be like, oh, they make up their own facts. They don't believe in science. They're all racist. They're all misogynists, right? They're all rapists. At least that's what they throw out to, the Freedom Trucker convoy protesters these days. So, again, just wanted to highlight that because I couldn't believe that in 42 seconds, they were able to fit so much hypocrisy into one little clip. So just thought I'd share that with you guys before we jumped into today's first Blue Pill story. And so the first Blue Pill story, just want to give a shout out. I believe Globe and Mail is the first Canadian mainstream press news outlet to actually cover what's going on in Shanghai. So, a round of applause for Globe and Mail for eventually getting around to it. A bunch of us on the internet have been talking about it for a while. So I'm glad that, they at least read our tweets. But I can't help but, I guess, the conspiracy theorist in me wants to point out that it seems like they released this on, I think today is a stat holiday, right? So on a Friday when not a lot of people are going to be paying attention to the news. And I still haven't seen this making the rounds on other major Canadian mainstream news outlets. But from the Globe and Mail, Shanghai residents plea for help as they are forcibly removed from homes during COVID-19 lockdown video show. And so essentially they just highlight some of the stuff that we've covered multiple times here on this show already, but just want to highlight one point here. Greeted with shock and anger online, the videos are building on a growing body of documentation showing abuse and mistreatment by workers dressed in hazmat gear, nicknamed Big Whites in Chinese, for the color of their uniforms, as they struggle to enforce the country's rigid anti-pandemic regulations, not only in Shanghai, but in dozens of other cities where tiny numbers of COVID-19 cases have been met with often draconian restrictions. Again, it's just interesting to even hear how they choose to frame it, right? The country's rigid anti-pandemic regulations. Well, based upon the videos I've seen, I would actually argue these are just like anti-citizen regulations. It seems like the actual goal here is to literally, I mean, not figuratively, literally attack their own citizens, right? Kill their own citizens, animals, separate them from their children, essentially try and dehumanize them to the fullest extent the state is capable at this point in time. The Globe and Mail does an okay job of covering this. They've got some sources that I hadn't seen before talking about it that just kind of confirm what's going on from some local authorities. But I can't help but notice they don't have any of the videos, right? They don't have any of the source media that they're actually talking about here that is outraging, Westerners. So I guess this is a step in the right direction. So that's a blue pill story for us for today. Next, from Global News. Gas prices expected to rise across southern Ontario again Saturday, analysts say. So gas prices are expected to rise yet again across much of southern Ontario on Saturday. So if you haven't got your gas, maybe you want to do that. After rising 11 cents per liter since Wednesday. So Wednesday was what, 2 days ago? So it increased 11 cents 2 days ago. And it's going to increase another 12 cents tomorrow at the pumps. According to Dan McTeague, president of Canadians for Affordable Energy, McTeague said a 4-cent increase was expected, but that jumped to 12 cents with oil companies also including the increased rate for summer blend gas. If you guys want to understand that article a little bit more, link in the video description down below. Next blue pill story of the day, notorious BC gangster shot to death in Edmonton. Curtis Vidal, 41, had been living in Alberta since completing his 8-year sentence for BC convictions related to a violent 2013 home invasion in the Fraser Valley. The reason I decided to cover this was it was just actually like the number one news story. At the time, at least, it was the number one trending news story on National Post, and it seemed to be top headlines amongst a lot of the other mainstream news outlets. So if you guys are interested in understanding what's going on with, it sounds like this isn't an isolated incident. My understanding is his brother was also killed back in 2019. Next from MSN, Elon Musk wants Twitter to be the platform for free speech. What about misinformation? And again, this is a common rhetoric, I guess, we're seeing from mainstream media and blue check marks right now is that, Elon Musk is going to push all this fake news, misinformation, and, it's going to be the end of public discourse as we know it. I just don't know how they can say this stuff with a straight face, right? It's one thing to say that he wants the platform to be free speech, because at least based upon what he says and his actions, that appears to be true. But to claim that, he's trying to push misinformation, that he's making up his own facts, there doesn't really seem to be much evidence or really any evidence of that. But, let's not get in the way of a good headline. This actually just feels, Elon Musk is becoming the new Canadian trucker, I guess, is what we're seeing literally in real time as the mainstream media's narratives evolve. Next, this is going to bring us into our first red pill story of the day. And what's interesting is I have not seen this anywhere else other than on this anti-money laundering website or Law in Canada website. So SEC charges several Canadians, including David Sidhu, with securities fraud over alleged pump and dump fraud ring that generated $145 million in proceeds of crime. And so this article is actually from today. And the reason it originally caught my eye, I'm not going to lie, is because there's a photo of him with Justin Trudeau. Now, I'm sure Trudeau takes lots of photo ops with lots of different individuals and has to just, give them random awards like this. So this isn't a smoking gun or anything against Trudeau, but I did want to use this to just highlight, I don't see why we use government to the extent we do. I don't think government should have awards. I don't think government should be picking random individual citizens and putting them on a pedestal, because what happens is, most humans are pretty fallible. We're a pretty fallible bunch overall. you can take your own personal polls to come to that conclusion. I'm not too concerned that you'll come to a different one. But this idea that, the government does things like this, I think does put us just in awkward positions where conspiracy theorists like me would want to jump down rabbit holes and dig into how deep's their relationship, right? Is this anything like, the We Charity scandal? Is this anything like Chinese billionaires donating to the Trudeau Foundation? Or, any of the other random scandals we've talked about in the past here when it comes to the Liberals, Justin Trudeau, and, how our government operates. But anyways, just wanted to highlight this because I actually do believe money laundering is a huge issue in Canada. Had you asked me, honestly, back in 2016, 2017, I didn't think it was. I was a very active real estate investor, never came across these shady shenanigans that people always talked about. But as I started reading books, like Sam Cooper's Willful Blindness, my eyes began to open to how much money laundering actually does occur in Canada and how this is actually a very serious problem. Not only just because, it distorts things like our local economies and inflates real estate prices, and not just because, it invites organized crime into Canada, but also because it begins to actually undermine, our fundamental democracies. Because what ends up happening is all this money being laundered in to these countries like Canada incentivizes organized crime to essentially want to buy politicians to look the other way. We've covered this in the past, I think it was actually just this week or last week, where we had a story covering the fact that an individual that compared concerns over Chinese money laundering to the equivalent of Nazi alarmism. But it turns out he actually made what was a cool $1.5 million in surplus selling his property to a Chinese property developer. Yeah, that's actually how our government works, right? It's not just European politicians or Hunter Biden that will paint a random piece of art, sell it for hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to people that would like to buy, political favoritism from politicians and the administration. And then we're all just supposed to swallow it and accept that, hey, this is normal behavior. Nothing out of the ordinary here. I think, Hunter Biden's a fantastic painter. Next from the Vancouver Sun, Trudeau's crackdown on real estate investors won't work. Here's why. Opinion: the Liberal government headline-grabbing attempt to rein in rampant housing speculation are full of loopholes and distractions. If you guys want to go down this rabbit hole, I really encourage you to do so. I feel like we've probably beat this dead horse at this point in time enough that we don't need to revisit it. But I would argue that if Justin Trudeau really cared about affordability when it comes to housing, he probably would have done that in the first 7 years of being prime minister. But what do I know? I'm no politician. Next from News Punch, Google like DuckDuckGo announces purge of independent media, only mainstream media allowed. So I guess DuckDuckGo wanted to make sure they destroyed their business model. That's the only real conclusion I can come to at this point in time. This literally seems like it should be parody. This should be an article I'm reading from the Babylon Bee. But like so many others, and this is a direct quote here, like so many others, I am sickened by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the gigantic humanitarian crisis it continues to create. Hashtag stand with Ukraine. Weinberg tweeted on Wednesday, at DuckDuckGo, we've been rolling out search updates that downrank sites associated with Russian disinformation. So thank God we've got Big Brother like Gabrielle looking out for us, because I would hate to think what we would do if we were allowed to, accumulate our own sources of information and come to our own conclusions rather than, letting mainstream media do the thinking for us. Like, we saw here on, I think it's This Morning Joe. I think that's what that new segment's called. So anyways, again, thank you, Gabriel, from saving ourselves from, having to actually do our own research and come to our own conclusions. Next from True North, more inclusive, military to permit face tattoos, fake nails, dyed hair on soldiers. I'm kind of curious what your guys' thoughts are on this. I honestly don't really have a dog in this fight. I honestly, like, if I was in charge, if I was dictator for a day, first thing you would see is the Canadian military, along with all other government organizations, shrink dramatically. So this would be a non-issue in my world, because we'd have a lot more volunteers and a lot less full-time paid staff. But the plan purports to be safe, operationally effective, inclusive, and reflective of societal norms and expectations. I guess one question I have immediately here is I wonder which one of those characteristics they prioritize. Personally, if I had to bet, I bet operationally effective is probably the least important. I imagine safe, and I'm going to interpret this to mean safe spaces, inclusive and reflective of societal norms and expectations is probably higher on the ranking when it comes to how government officials are going to operate the military versus, concerns of things like operationally effective. We've seen this in the past in previous stories where we covered, I think it was a clown pill story from Louder with Crowder, which was talking about the fact that they've started making um, maternity jet fighter pilot suits. So essentially, while you shouldn't be taking all those G's when you're pregnant, they want to make sure that if you decide, I guess, if you want an abortion while flying a plane rather than just going to your local abortion clinic, that would be a solution, I guess. Anyways, just wanted to link to this article. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts and opinions. I know we've got a few viewers here that have been in the army or are currently in the army. What's your take on this? Is this a big deal? Is this a nothing burger? Is this True North making a big deal out of something that's just kind of a meh? Let me know. Next from Blacklock's reporter, Watchdog buries complaint. And this is a story we've actually covered in a couple of different pieces here, but this is important to note because essentially what we've seen play out here, I believe it was a National Observer journalist. Let's just read it. A press watchdog yesterday said it will not investigate allegations. An environmental journalist hastened her own arrest at a pipeline protest. John Fraser, chair of the National News Media Council, said it was not the council's job to offer general comment on issues. The council deals with unresolved complaints about specific breaches of journalistic standards and does not offer general comment on issues outside its mandate, said Fraser. He did not elaborate. Fraser's remark followed the council's dismissal of allegations. Amber Bracken, a journalist for the environmental advocacy website, it was the Narwhal. That was it. The Narwhal joined a pipeline protest in breach of a court order, then failed to identify herself for more than an hour until taken into RCMP custody. Bracken subsequently wrote, "My arrest makes me a big part of a national, let's get that out of the way, a national reckoning with press freedoms." And it's been fascinating to see how the Narwhal and this journalist in particular have made this out to be such a giant issue when it appears that, the police had no idea that she was part of the press, that, she seemed to have been participating with the protesters. She ignored the court order, and yet she's been, she was nominated for the Canadian Journalism Foundation Jackman Award for Excellence in Journalism. Meanwhile, we'd look at, how'd the coverage of the Freedom Trucker Convoy go? Well, wasn't it Andy Lee? Oftentimes, a citizen journalist. I believe she also writes for Blacklock's reporter. Wasn't she essentially memory hold? Didn't she have her bank account frozen for her coverage? Didn't she get deleted off of Twitter for her personal opinions and political views and the stories she was sharing? Yeah, it's just fascinating in this day and age to see essentially that mainstream media, I think they actually have drank so much of their own Kool-Aid, they still believe their own bullshit, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I would argue that, if we're thinking about things like, award for excellence in journalism, I would I would tap Andy Lee for that award way before I would tap the reporter from the Narwhal here. So again, link to the Blacklocks reporter article in the video description down below. Next from Rebel News, is it ethical? Ontario's chief medical officer of health also sits on Pfizer's board. How ethical is it that the same doctor who sits on an advisory board for Pfizer also is forcing compliance with their products by way of government directives and requirements? And yeah, I think that this is actually a very reasonable question. Kind of feels like a conflict of interest. Kind of feels like even if it wasn't a conflict of interest, just for optics sake, you would want to insulate yourself from any sort of confusion over this. And, when we're looking at things like, there's actually a decent amount of information here, so I encourage you guys to read it all, but the ATIP confirms most of what I already know. There's a funding agreement between the Canadian Institute of Health Research and the National Research Network for Lyme Disease. They've developed the Canadian Lyme Disease Research Network, of which Dr. Moore is principal investigator. The research is done in partnership with the Public Health Agency of Canada and has been allotted a grand total of $4 million over 5 years. The host institution, also Moore's employer, Queen's University of Kingston, is the receiver of this grant funding. And so the reason this is important to understand is when we see the fact that, our top doctor, I guess, as mainstream media has been framing Dr. Moore for a while now, when we see the fact that he's not just in charge of being top doctor of Ontario, but he's involved in a lot of other aspects of research and stuff like that. And while that may, in theory, be a net benefit, as we kind of dig into this deeper and we realize that, like, oh, Visor grants chunk of the funding that he's receiving for this, right? That his employer, Queen's University, also benefits from that funding. I can understand why certain individuals kind of jump to conclusions when it comes to this. If you guys want to link to that information, it's in the video description down below. Next, from the Ron Paul Institute, should we commit to fight Russia for Finland? So if you guys haven't been paying attention to this, and I don't blame you at this point in time for wanting to tune out, Sweden and Finland, they're being positioned to join NATO in the near future. And so the Prime Minister of Sweden and Finland both signed or signaled Wednesday that they will likely be applying for membership in NATO. The prospect is most welcome, says the Washington Post. Finland and Sweden should join NATO. The editorial was titled "A Way to Punish Putin." Before joining the rejoicing in NATO capitals, we might inspect what NATO membership for these two Nordic nations would mean for the United States. Finland is a nation the size of Germany, but with a population only 4% of that of Russia and a border with Russia that's 830 miles long. Should Finland join NATO, the United States, under Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, would be obligated to go to war with the world's largest nuclear power to retrieve Finnish lands that an enraged Russia might grab. And obviously Canada would be riding shotgun because we're also in NATO for that. And I can't help but, in the more conspiratorial parts of my brain, think that, like, oh, the Democrats, the war machine, the West isn't getting the full-blown war they want, so how else can we antagonize Russia? Now, again, just because we're antagonizing Russia doesn't inherently make Russia the good guy. I don't think there's a good guy in this conflict, or I'd be surprised to learn that there is one. But this definitely feels like more warmongering, particularly when we covered yesterday that Justin Trudeau is also saying that Putin and the Russians are committing genocide. This is the sort of rhetoric that's going to make sure that there's no sort of compromise available on the table. It seems like we're going full steam ahead into this is going to have to result in regime change. We're going to back Russia into a corner where Russia's either going to have to lash out at us directly or they're going to have to overthrow Putin. I got to be honest, either one of those options feel like it's going to come with a lot of chaos when we're thinking about the geopolitical stage. But just wanted to highlight that for you guys. Next, from Postmillennial, and this is going to transition us into our first Black Pill story of the day. Concerned dad demands answers from conservative leadership candidate on medical gender transition of minors. I'm here representing thousands of parents whose children in the school system and by social media have come to believe in this pseudoscientific nonsense that there is such a thing as a child born in the wrong body, said Elston. You guys maybe have came across his content in the past. Maybe you haven't. This is in reference to Bill C-4, right, which bans conversion therapy. And there's a whole rabbit hole to be had just exploring that idea in and of itself, right? Because understand that under the government's definition of conversion therapy, it's really a one-way street, right? You're allowed to essentially have conversion therapy to convert, a male or a female into the opposite sex, but you're not allowed to essentially try and revert that process or to try and stop or retard that process, which is interesting to say the least. Again, this is an area where I only try and know enough to understand the basics. Once I understood the basics, I was like, yeah, this is just a hard pass for me. I don't see, I think Tim Pool actually makes a great analogy here, right? When we're talking about minors, and that's primarily what we're talking about, right? And that's particularly what this article is exploring here. But usually when we're talking about the trans agenda, that's usually the microcosm we're playing in is with minors. So let's talk about someone under the age of 18 or even under the age of 16. Well, if that same kid came to you and was like, hey, I want breast implants because I feel like my breasts are too small, you would be like, nope, how about you just wait a bit, right? Let's wait until you're an adult. And then if you want breast implants, you can go buy your breast implants. And yet, when we look at it through the lens of the trans agenda, the idea that children should be able to make irreversible decisions about going on hormone therapy, about gender affirmative surgeries and things like that, is wild to think. Because I don't know about you guys, but when I think of myself under the age of 18, I was retarded. I suspect a lot of you guys were also pretty stupid in your younger years. And I'm really glad that people weren't making these, irreversible decisions for themselves at that point in time. I don't think it would have been something that would have ever tempted me. But again, with all the dogma, with all the propaganda being pushed at this point in time, understand that we're seeing like weird anomalies, to say the least, where like, there's certain like classes that will come out. You'll hear a headline, read a story about a class where 60% of the students identify as non-binary. It's like, that just straight up is not normal. I don't know how else to describe it other than that. But I'll stop my ranting here because it is a Friday on a long weekend. Elston noted that amongst girls in particular, we've had an explosion, around 4,000% increase of girls who now identify as boys, and they go to the gender clinics of these children's hospitals. And the practice is to simply affirm them only. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that 4,000% increase is good for the pharmaceutical companies that sell hormone drugs and hormone blockers. So I guess maybe there's a little bright side to see there. The pharmaceutical companies can also make money there. Next from the counter signal, Trudeau condemned by Nazi hunter for training neo-Nazis. We've covered this in the past in regards to the Azov Brigade. If you guys want to read this particular story, link in the video description down below. But just a reminder, Canada has been funding and training the neo-Nazis in eastern Ukraine for a while. And I guess, honestly, there is a lot of like misinformation, disinformation, and confusing counter stories and narratives around it. Personally, one of the things that I think, one of the pieces of content I guess I consumed that did a very solid job of explaining the Azov and similar sort of battalions' roles in the 2014-2015 revolution in Ukraine was Oliver Stone's documentary. I'm trying to think. Ukraine on Fire, I believe is what it was called. And I really encourage you guys, seek it out. He was actually posting it for free on like Rumble and other social media platforms because it got banned off of YouTube because, they wouldn't want you actually understanding what happened in the past in order to make an informed decision about what's occurring in the present. Next from Fee Stories, new study provides yet more evidence that COVID lockdowns didn't work. Politicians decide to play God, and those decisions proved disastrous. Yep, that pretty much sums it up. This is a good article, though, if you just kind of want to explore this thread a little bit further and see, what was the economic impact for different U.S. states. And, we've covered this a bit at this point in time, so I'm just going to keep rolling here. But Postmillennial, Trudeau-funded Polster says he will make sure Poilievre never leads Canada. So Pierre Poilievre is an acolyte of authoritarian populism. This is never healthy. You are on notice. Going to make sure you are never going to lead my country. I don't make idle threats. I gotta be honest. I feel like if one of the truckers would have said that about Trudeau, that we'd have a full-blown police investigation, but maybe I'm being overly sensitive about the rhetoric here. So Canadian pollster and founder of Ecos Research, Frank Graves, tweeted and deleted that he would make it his mission to ensure Conservative Party leadership frontrunner Pierre Poilievre never becomes prime minister, all while his firm is being paid by the Trudeau Liberals. And it feels a little rich, this hypocrisy. So essentially, looking at the volume of custom research studies by supplier in 2020 to 2021, he actually had 16 custom studies for 1.6 million, and that appears to make him the highest out of these three that are shared here in this document. So again, it's very interesting to think that someone whose business probably receives a significant portion of their total revenue. And again, I don't have the facts here, so I am kind of jumping to conclusion, but I got a feeling that, if we could see the revenue breakdown of Ecos Research, it probably would back this up, right? I got a feeling that a large portion of their revenue will be coming from the Trudeau government. And so when you see things like this, I think that this is very obvious, the partisanship here, right? And even facts like he's calling out, is a big crowd. Equally remarkable is the hue of the crowd. All white, almost a quarter of Canada are not white. I think I see a pattern here. Dude, like, and he's right. About a quarter of Canadians aren't white, but that means 75% are. So that means when you're looking at a giant crowd like this, yeah, you would expect the majority of people to be white. And then, if you look at a province like Alberta, which isn't where immigrants usually go right off the bat, right? Again, you expected even to potentially have a higher percentage of total Caucasians in the group. But I can't help but think you're the one that's constantly focusing on identity politics, and not just a buddy here from Ecos Research, but everyone that's focused on these identity politics, right? That's all they get caught up about. But again, I don't think that someone that's a pollster that's being hired by the government, that's receiving over $1 million a year from the government to do his work, should be taking these hard partisan stances. And certainly they shouldn't literally be saying things like, you are on notice, going to make sure you are never going to lead my country. I don't make idle threats. What does that mean, Frank? Does that mean that you'll do whatever it takes? Does that mean that you would manipulate data? Does that mean that you would misrepresent some of the information you gather on behalf of the Canadian government, which pays you for it? Just interesting. And then if this isn't a big deal, why'd you delete the tweet? Right? The internet's forever. So anyways, moving on from that, this is from Bright Light News. And honestly, this clip's worth watching from beginning to end because I have not heard nearly enough talked about Ontario Bill 100, which was passed. And it appears that only one MPP, Rick Nicholas, actually even cared to speak up and stand out against this. And he was the only one that voted against it, which again is just so telling of where we are at this moment in time. And I need to do a little bit more research. It said there were 4 other MPs that previously voted against it, but were not in attendance for the final vote. I can't help but wonder, like Roman Baber, right? I would have expected him to be against this as well. So was he one of the ones just not in attendance? And listen at the very end of this clip, how few people are even in frickin' attendance in the first place, right? Like, I don't know. Why is forced attendance necessary in grade school, but yet for politicians, it seems like they never show up for work?
Bill 100 does not affect a virtually permanent state of emergency. It's business as usual. Tyranny will literally become the new norm with no end in sight. The powers conferred allow for the seizure of all property, including homes, for far less than another convoy or blockade. Cars and trucks may be seized administratively with no hearing or trial. Same with one's license and plates. No hearing, no trial. No presumption of innocence. One is guilty until proven innocent, and there is no incentive or practicable way for one to be proven innocent. Summary arrests without a warrant are also contained in Section 13. The powers are all non-emergency measures. The act lasts forever. There is no sunset clause. So whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty? I believe this is an overreach by taking a strong-arm approach with the aim of stopping people from conducting peaceful protests in the name of democracy. The amendments to the Civil Remedies Act legislation that has been used to seize houses is unconscionable and completely unwarranted. We're all shocked at the lightning pace, as I said, that the way this is being put through. It appears to be a shoe-in on third reading after committee as early as the beginning of, today. I cannot support this bill because sometimes what's contained in a bill in black and white, we don't know what goes on behind that, and those are the regulations that can, in fact, they don't have to be voted on, but they can make those changes. And that's the thing that is very, very scary for a lot of people in Ontario and our Canada as well. They say it's for bridges and crossings. I think it's for more than that. Thank you very much, Speaker.
All those in favor of the motion will please say aye. Aye. All those opposed to the motion will please say nay. Nay. In my opinion, the ayes have it.
Isn't that just a sad turnout? When we're talking about things like the government or police being able to seize your property without a charge, right? Doesn't it kind of feel like that's a big deal? Doesn't it kind of feel like it should, every one of our MPPs should have voted on it and participated in this important vote? Yeah. Anyways, link to Bright Light News in the video description down below, and just chalk that up to, one more black pill. And then from Zero Hedge, and this is actually going to bring us into our clown pill story of the day. We chatted about it briefly earlier in the week. The article, I forget whether it was from Newsweek or something like that, essentially saying that Bitcoiners were psychopaths. So this is from Zero Hedge. Does dark tetrad of personality traits drive some to buy crypto? And I just thought this was too fun or funny to not share. But essentially they're saying like narcissism, Machiavellianism, psychopathy, sadism, positivity, conspiracy beliefs, and fear of missing out is all leading towards an attitude toward cryptocurrency and a willingness to take on the risks associated with it. So, you know what? Yeah, I guess maybe I need to start identifying as a psychopath, and my pronouns are psychopath, because we live in the clown timeline anyways, so maybe we should just go limp and lean into it. Next, moving on to our white pill stories of the day. This first one from the Epic Times, we covered it briefly, but just wanted to highlight this because this one's a little bit more in depth than what I shared with you guys last time. School board officials not in position to reinstate mask mandates, Ontario Education Minister. So students have the choice if they want to wear a mask in schools, Minister says. And this is important because a lot of these, tin pot dictators, a lot of these petty tyrants in the administration, they count on honestly being able to bully individuals into compliance and to being able to obfuscate or confuse individuals into compliance. And we need to make sure we actually understand where we're at in the timeline because, again, they change rules and switch rules and tweak mandates and measures so often that, if your head's spinning, I don't blame you. But it's important to understand that there's no reason why your child in Ontario should be masked at this point in time. There's honestly no good reason ever that your child should be masked in Ontario, but certainly at this moment in time, it is nothing short of child abuse to force your child. Now, again, if for whatever reason your child loves wearing a mask and they want to continue to wear a mask, I do believe they should have the right to do it. You should maybe get them checked to make sure they're mentally stable, but I think everyone should be allowed to do whatever they want when it comes to their face. But certainly the idea of forced mask mandates, no more. We are past that point. Next from Spencer Fernando, defunding the CBC would strengthen freedom of press in Canada. A massive centralized state-run media institution is antithetical to the free and open exchange of ideas we should want to see in this country. And the only reason I'm going to highlight this as a white pill is because I'm hearing this more and more often. And honestly, I think there's a lot of people that they may not be hardcore defund the CBC right now, but a lot of them are like, shrug. I don't really care. And that's a step in the right direction. Apathy is hopefully on the path towards wanting to tear down the propaganda wing of the government. So I was a little short on white pills, so we're going to count that one. And then I want to highlight the bitaction.net group. So this is the Bitcoin Action Group. Essentially, the idea here is, I'll just read their mission. So welcome to the Bit Action Group. Our mission is to create a coordinated political effort to address economic and freedom-related issues within Canada. So if you want to participate, I encourage you to do so. I saw Brad Mills was tweeting out about this and a few other Canadians who I respect in Bitcoin Twitter. So if you guys want to join a action group, I think that this would be a good action group to check out at least. So link in the video description down below. And let's wrap up today with the meme of the day. So your dream car, and honestly, I don't even know. It looks like a fast car. It's probably that Lambo, a Porsche, one of those sort of cars. And then my dream car. And I kind of feel like my dream car is a lot cooler than your dream car if your dream car is the orange car. Never really got fast cars in the first place, but I totally get why having a homemade tank is badass as fuck. So that's it for today. Hope you guys are having a good Friday. Hope you have a great Easter long weekend. If you guys enjoyed this show, if you like what I'm doing with the Maple Pill, smash that like button, hit subscribe. It is fantastic to think that we got to 1,000 subscribers, so I really do appreciate that. If you guys want to follow me on Instagram, it's Matt McKeever Unfiltered on Instagram. Reminder, I'm never going to DM you out of the blue asking you to trade in cryptocurrency or send me cryptocurrency. Those are 100% of the time spammers. 100% of the time. It just, the odds of me DMing someone completely out of the blue is, that's probably happened less times than Justin Trudeau's worn blackface, I guess, which maybe isn't saying a lot, but, it's a bit. So anyways, that's it for tonight's episode of the Maple Pill. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with me, and the fact that you would spend your Friday evening with me says a lot. I also appreciate the fact you guys make this a two-way conversation. So before we wrap up, let's see what's going on in the chat. We've got Graham in the chat. What's up? We've got Benjamin. Have a great weekend, everyone. Even though it doesn't feel like spring yet. Yeah, it's literally snowing right now. We've got multiple inches of snow over the last couple of days. I could have sworn that spring and summer was supposed to last longer than 2 days, but here we are. Happy Easter. We've got sup, y'all. Made it. Hey, everyone. Hey, what's up, Dirty Burger? We've got Sandra. Hope you have a happy Easter. Thank you for what you do. Appreciate that. And I hope everyone also has a great Easter weekend. It's all anti-citizen. Yeah. Pretty much at this point in time, when you hear like anti-pandemic measures, you should actually just read as like anti-person or anti-citizen measures, because that's absolutely the case. Dirty Burger saying Justin loves this. I have no doubt that, at night he pleasures himself to some of the footage coming out of the Shanghai CCP. Hi, everyone. What's up, Farzana? The lib mainstream media and their misinformation campaign. Nobody cares except them. Yeah. And yeah, I don't disagree with you. Graham Griffin, the switch to summer blend gas makes it go up. I thought switching to winter blend made it go up because of antifreezing additives. What's next? Did you breathe today? Oh, that made gas go up. Yeah. Well, again, let's be fair. It's at least been 2 whole days since gas went up by double-digit pennies, and that's a pretty good streak. Now, it sounds like we're going to lose the streak tomorrow when it goes up by another 12 cents, but hey, maybe after that, we'll get another 2-day streak where gas doesn't go up. Al saying that DuckDuckGo sold out a long time ago. Yeah, they've been drifting in the wrong direction for a while, but this really feels like the nail on the final nail in the coffin, in my opinion, simply because to have your CEO come out and say that is just so discouraging. If you want to actually be, a search engine that people trust, that they turn to. Terry says, I did 6 years in reserves back in 2000. Military tries to show professionalism and pride. Also, gas masks don't seal well to beards, and piercings or rings get caught on shit. Those are all very wise words there, Terry. And you do kind of feel like that might impact the effectiveness and functionality and safety of both the troops and any sort of action involving the troops. Gender medical reversal, what the fuck, says Al. I was dumb too, joined the Army Reserves at 16. And again, I think that I imagine that the vast majority of people that choose to join the Army, that choose to join the police, that choose to join the reserves, they probably have great intentions at the start. But I don't know. It's hard for me to think that if you belong to those institutions for extended periods of time, and that you're not going to be exposed to certain things that almost deserve being called out or whistle-blown. And if that is the case and you're not doing it, I think at that point in time, that's when you're starting to turn to the dark side. Does that make sense? Again, that's not me throwing shade at anyone, because I really do believe a lot of people have good intentions, but good intentions honestly aren't enough. And that's for myself included. It's part of one of the reasons where, for a long time, I thought causing no harm, doing nothing bad made me a good person. But I don't think the absence of evil or the absence of bad inherently makes you good. At best, it probably makes you neutral. And again, that's often with us ignoring how we're often complicit in a lot of bad things. So my hopes is that by speaking out more, by trying to promote the political views and social norms that I believe will help build a better society for tomorrow, I hope that slowly starts adding to my good tally rather than just like the neutral tally I used to focus on accumulating. Dirty Burger, libs are weirdos that really all we need to know. It's best not to try and figure them out. That's probably some very wise words. Al says, thank you for a great show, Matt. Your daily perseverance for what you do is admirable. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Graham says, I hear those Bitcoiners are so extreme they avoid seed oils and value physical fitness. Yes, and I believe those are also hallmarks of white supremacy. So again, don't let the fact that there are non-white Bitcoiners fool you. Bitcoiners, they're pretty much the same thing as truckers, or the same thing as Elon Musk. They're all racist, misogynist, and every other bad word Justin Trudeau can think of. Terry says the teachers are actually being mandated to wear them again in Ontario. That is wild. And teachers, again, I think far too many teachers are complicit in the evils that their union's willing to participate in and really even strive for at this point in time. And it's because they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to risk their pension. They don't want this, that, or the other. But I don't know, that language is definitely the language that we see on the path to hell, right? The idea of I was just following orders, I was just doing what everyone else was doing, I was just keeping my head down, not causing trouble, I saw nothing, I heard nothing, I spoke nothing, right? All those classic things. After holiday, we are going back to face diapers in my workplace. Sad. I'm really sorry to hear that, and I'd encourage you to speak out and stand up to the furthest extent you're willing to. Terry, love the tank. Have a great weekend. Great show again. Appreciate it. Free Faster. Happy Easter, Matt. Have a great weekend. Thank you. Aislinn, there's another famous Matt quote for the t-shirt series. I've DM'd people out of the blue less times than Trudeau has worn blackface. We really need a screen printer for the Citadel. Awesome. Well, I'm glad you guys are all having a good Friday. Appreciate you guys hanging out with me. And we'll be back Monday, same time, same place, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And yeah, that's it. Have a good Easter weekend. And I meant to start off the show asking this question, but we'll pick up the conversation on Monday. Have you guys really listened closely to the Maple Pill intro and outro song? Because it's actually filled with some pretty good gems. I co-wrote a lot of that with Dan, who's the musician that performs it. There's a link if you guys want to check out Dan and his NFT project in the video description down below, Project LB52. But if you listen at the very end of the song, it's actually a bit of a Fed post. So I don't know. I like it.
Asking blue pill, red pill, corporate press, I've had my fill. I'm just a simple chat, believing in my own will. Wet fire, math table, scheming, this is no drill. Haters masking boosted, but still with no chill. Need to come and take it if you wanna mess with my hill. We've been 3D printing, set ready for that ghost kill.